Hello, this is Richard Wisher, and tonight I'm going to show you a bit more on the project that we initiated last week, which was creating a rocket using BlocksCAD. So this time what we're going to do is we're going to create a stylistic rocket based on the cylinder shape that I showed you last time. So here we go, let's go into shapes. Let's bring out the cylinder into the workspace. There's a cylinder, radius 10, top and bottom, and height 10. Let's change that to 20. And then let's see it render. So we move down here and we render that circle, that cylinder. So there you are. We have a cylinder. It's 10 by 10, 10 radius at the top, 10 radius at the bottom, and 20 height. So now if I change that to, let's change the color of it. Let's have a red rocket. So there's our red rocket, and I'll move that down to the bottom. So here we go. So how can we, first of all, we've done one object, which is a cylinder. Now what we need to do is to have a compound object with multiple objects within the same construct. So what I need to do is, first of all, the first things that we do, we need to create a transform. So let's just put transform. This allows us to move things around. So it's a very useful thing to have here. So that's that one. And then also what's really useful is to create a color. And the color one is useful because, I'll show you in a second, because if you put the color on here, see that color now is yellow. So if I now transform that again, so re-render it, it's turned to yellow. If I change this up here to red, and go in here and I'll select the third red along. So it's that one. And then I'll render it. So that's me done. So I'm now in full control of my my objects. What I now want to do is I want obviously to have a second cylinder. So let's create a second cylinder by going onto here, right clicking and duplicate. So we now have a second cylinder. And what I found really useful when I'm doing the construction of a cylinder or multiple stages in a rocket is it's a good idea to change the different parts so you can see where they are and what they're doing. So change the second part to a green. And if I do the translation, so the cylinder that I'm doing is 20 height. So if I now change the second cylinder on the transform, which is a Z axis, if I now put that to 20, so I'm transforming it, I'm moving up 20 up the Z axis. If I now then re-render that, so we come in here and we render, what we now have is the green above the red. And let's just do another one just for completeness. So if we do a third one, so we do copy, duplicate, and we'll make the bottom color, we'll make the bottom, this other stage, or the top stage, we'll make that blue, shall we? So we've got red, green, and blue. So now, and then what we want to do this time is move it up again so it doesn't overlap. So we need 40. So there we have three-stage rocket. So if I render that, so I have three stages. I've got three stages on my rocket. So what I need to do now is I need to do I need to put a nose cone on my rocket. So let's use the top stage to create a nose cone. So if we say radius 0 and radius 2, I think radius 2 is the top one. If we move that to 0, which now changes a cylinder to a cone, what we should now have is to render that. No, that didn't work. So why was that not working? Let's try rendering that again. Oh, I know what it is. So what it is this part here. I hadn't unlocked the padlock, so that's a good learning point. If the padlock's in, it's making for a cylinder, and make sure that the top of the cylinder is the same width as the bottom. I've unlocked it now, so it should now work. So let's try rendering it. No, there's something wrong here. It's not rendering. So it's come up in red. So if I now put a 10 and put a 0. Now let's try it. So there we go. So we've now rendered the new shape. So we have the cone, we have one cylinder, two cylinders. Now the other thing we need in a rocket, obviously, is some boosters at the bottom. So let's do, so these are our main parts. 3 stages. Now let's do our extra rockets at the bottom. So if we put a, let's create a rocket. So if we do, we'll use the same construct again. So we'll duplicate again. And what we'll do here is we want it to be a cone, but 10 is too much. So if we bring that down to say 5, we want it to be at the base of the rocket. So that's then 0. So, and we want the transform needs to be outside of the core cylinder. So if I now put that at, let's put it way outside so you can actually see it. So the radius normally is it's 10. So if we say 15, and now this should put a cone at the bottom, but slightly outside. So if we try that, no, that didn't work. So it's still inside. So let's do 15. I think maybe this will work. I don't know. Let's try that and then render it. So there we are. The reason I couldn't see it was behind. So you can see there that we've actually got we don't need the y to be 15. We can pay that back to 0. So what you can see is there's an awful lot of maths involved in this. There's a lot of pre-planning with the maths. So where did that go to? So it's because I put it in the Z. So it's not the Z at all. It's the Y, of course. The Z is the vertical. So if I put the Z as 0, what should happen? It should work now. So now try it. There we go. So we've got our first booster. Now let's just bring the booster in a little bit. So we know that the radius we use for the main cylinder is 10. So now to put this on the cylinder diameter, or so the cylinder radius, the edge of that radius, 10 will work. So let's just try that. So now you can see that we've actually got our booster on the side. So what I'll do now is clearly if I, let's move this up. Let's duplicate this. And let's duplicate again. And let's duplicate again. So this gives me 1, 2, 1. There we go. 2, 3. So that would give me 4 boosters. But clearly, I don't want them to all be. If I put that in like that, it would just overwrite. So in this case, what I need to now do is actually do the same thing, but think about how I'm going to translate them. So I've got if x equals 0, y equals 10. The second one would be if I'm thinking about moving that in 90 degrees, then x would be 10, y would be 0, And then the next one would be x equals 0, y equals minus 10. And the final one would be x equals minus 10, and y would be 0. So shall we see how that looks? So if we now render that, so there we go. So that's good. The only thing that's slightly out of context is that center stage, that central rocket is a little bit, short for certainly what we're trying to make, which is a Saturn V rocket. So what we need to do, let's try, we go up to the blue one. This is where it's quite useful to have your colors, because by making the different stages different colors, we know where we are. And let's move this one up to the top, because this is our top one. And then let's put the red one at the bottom and the green one in the middle. We've actually got them aligned the same way. Let's put this into, instead of 10 to 0, let's make this an intermediate stage. So let's actually change this to 5. So what this will do now, it will turn it into a conversion. So it will be from a cylinder that's 10 wide to a cylinder that's 5 wide. I'll show you what I mean. So if I now render that, so you see it comes in a bit, and then what I need to do, that's probably too much. So let's do that as 7. Because you wouldn't have something as severe as that. So let's do a 7. Okay. I won't render that just yet, because what we can do, we can add another bit on, which is a bit more towards the top. So let's go up, add another one on. So if I now do this duplicate, bring this up here, and then I want to, I now want to put an actual cylinder at this point. So we don't want 7 and 10, we want 7 and 7. So as you can see, as I'm doing this, we really are, and I also want something that is, this has got to go above the previous one. So I'm now up to 60. Okay. And then what I'll do is I'll just put another one in, which is to close it off. I'll put a nose cone in. So if I duplicate that and bring it up here, now I want to put a nose cone in. So I then want to have the radius of 0. And I want to put in a height of, we've got up another 20, so I want a height of 80. So shall we now see what that does? So if we now go into render. And that looks pretty rocket-like. So let's just zoom out on that so we can see it. What I would like to do to make a proper Saturn rocket is just that green bit in the middle is a little bit small. So shall we just change that at the moment? So let's take it up by another 20. So we've got the green one here. You can see how it's quite important. So the green one here, what I can do is height 40. And that height of that is 40. I need to take the other ones up by, so if that radius now is, that cylinder is doubled up to 40, then 40 and 20 is 60. And 60 and 20 is 80. And 80 and 20 is 100. So let's see what happens on the render now. So if I now render that, I think that's pretty good. I don't know what you think. What I'd like to do now, though, is just to wind this thing up. Let's make it into a blue rocket. So let's change this one to blue. This color. Change it to blue. Change the green one to blue. And let's change at the bottom are they all the right color? Yeah, it looks all the right color. So now if we then render, so we now have a blue rocket of roughly the same right shape, and it looks pretty much like a Saturn V rocket. What I need to do now before I finalize this, and this is a little bit to do with the fact that we're going to create a 3D model. I use a transform here, which is I want to do a join. So the join will be a set. So I want to put these in here. I want to put this in as a union. So by putting it in as a union, what that means is this little red or green plus in here, I want to have quite a few. I don't know if that's going to be enough, but that's about right. What I now need to do is I need to put all my objects, I need to join them together so that it's recognized as a single object, not individual objects. All I've done at the moment, these items that I've got on the left are all individual objects. So what I'm doing here is I'm now picking up this union bit and I'm now joining them together. So I'm now treating this as one object. So put them all in. There we go. So I'm almost there. Is that everything? Let's have a look. Yeah, I've actually got too many on the joints, so let's take a couple of off. So there's minus, 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 and minus. So now I've combined them all together. I've as a union. Just re-render that just to be sure. So I have changed the model. So now this is me got my model here. You can see it's in 3 dimensions. I can have a look around the model. I can play with it. But what I want to do here is I want to generate this STL file. Now, if you remember, an STL file is a series of little triangles with the 4 points around the triangle and an arrow going through the middle, which represent the direction. And that's actually how you create a surface. So if I now generate the STL file, and I've called the file up here rocket construction. So the object down is now created an STL file. So that's how you create a Saturn V rocket. So thanks for your attention, and get building. And when you've created an STL file, you can either send that directly to a 3D printer, or you can send it to a colleague who's got a 3D printer, and he'll print it for me. So that's how it works. I'll just do a quick save. So that's then save project. And I think that's good to go. So we're ready for launch. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you might tune in for the next one. Thank you very much. Bye.